Have you ever wondered how we ended up with the world map we have today? You know, with all its familiar countries? It wasn't always like this. It all really started back in the 19th century with this one incredibly powerful idea that would completely change the face of Europe and eventually the whole world. So let's dive in and see how it all happened.
All right, first, I want you to try something. Just for a second, picture a world without countries as we know them. I mean, no Germany, no Italy, no Poland on the map. It sounds strange to us, but for most of Europe before the 19th century, that was just normal.
Okay, so take a look at this. This is so much more than just a painting. It's a vision of the future. The year is 1848, and a French artist, Frédéric Soriot, is imagining this incredible procession. You've got people from all over the world grouped together in what he saw as nations, marching past the Statue of Liberty. It was this beautiful, utopian dream of a new kind of world.
But look down here, in the foreground. See all that? Those are the shattered remains of crowns and royal symbols, just littered on the ground. And that little detail is everything. It tells you that for this new world of nations to be born, the old world, the world of kings and absolute rulers, had to be completely torn down.
You see, before nationalism took hold, your loyalty wasn't to a country, it was to a person, a king, an emperor, maybe a local duke. Just think about the Habsburg Empire. It was this wild patchwork of German speakers, Italians, Hungarians, Poles, Croats, you name it, all living under one emperor. They didn't really think of themselves as sharing one common identity at all.
So the big idea that changed all of this was the nation-state. And this is really the key to the whole story. It's not just about a government controlling some land anymore. No, the revolutionary part is that the people living on that land start to see themselves as a single community, with a shared identity, a shared history, a shared culture.
I love how the philosopher Ernst Renan put it. He said, a nation is a daily plebiscite. What does that even mean? Well, he argued that a nation isn't just about sharing a language or having the same ancestors. It's an active, daily choice that people make to live together and build a future together. It's an act of will, happening every single day.
So how does an idea like this go from a philosopher's essay to a political force so powerful it can topple entire empires? Well, for that story, we have to go to France.
The French Revolution in 1789 was the match that lit the whole fuse. It was the first time this radical concept really took root, that the right to rule, sovereignty, doesn't come from God to a king, it comes from the citizens themselves. And when the French revolutionary armies started marching across Europe, they didn't just bring soldiers, they brought this explosive idea with them.
And the revolutionaries were really smart about this. They knew they had to create a new collective French identity from scratch. So they introduced new concepts like the fatherland and the citizen. They got a new flag, created a national assembly that was elected by the people, and set up the same laws for everyone. They even pushed the version of French spoken in Paris to become the language for the entire nation, all to build that sense of unity.
And then, this guy shows up, Napoleon Bonaparte. Talk about a complicated figure. On the one hand, he basically killed democracy in France when he made himself emperor. But on the other hand, as his armies conquered Europe, they spread revolutionary ideas everywhere they went, things like equality before the law and getting rid of old feudal privileges. But here's the great irony. Napoleon's conquests had a totally unintended side effect. This cartoon shows him as a postman losing all the territories he conquered out of his bag. By forcing French rule on people, he actually sparked a huge nationalist backlash. People in Spain, in the German states, all over, started to define themselves against the French, which of course only made their own sense of national identity that much stronger. So after Napoleon is finally defeated, the old powers of Europe get together and try their best to stuff this nationalist genie back into the bottle. And that sets the stage for the biggest conflict of the 19th century. Here we are at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. The big players, Austria, Russia, Prussia, and Britain, sit down and literally redraw the map of Europe. Their whole goal was to turn back the clock. They wanted to put the old royal families back on their thrones and create a new conservative order to stamp out dangerous, revolutionary ideas like nationalism.
And this basically created a huge clash of worldviews. On one side, you had the liberals, who were pushing for things like constitutions, individual rights, and a government that had the people's consent. And on the other side, you had the conservatives, who were all about tradition, monarchy, the church, and using things like censorship to keep things the way they were.
And while these two images just capture that struggle perfectly,
On the left, you've got the raw energy of a popular uprising. And on the right, you see this famous caricature of a club of thinkers, where all the intellectuals have been muzzled so they can't speak freely. That was the reality for decades, a constant push and pull between revolution and repression.
But this fight wasn't just happening in the streets. It was also a battle for hearts and minds. And this is where the cultural movement of Romanticism became so important. Thinkers like Johann Gottfried Herder argued that the true national spirit, what he called the Volksgeist, wasn't found in courts and palaces, but in the common people, in their folk songs, their poetry, their language. Culture itself became a weapon to build a national identity.
So, the big wave of liberal revolutions in 1848 mostly fizzled out, and after that failure, the game changed. Nationalism stopped being just a liberal revolutionary idea. It became a tool that conservative leaders started using to build powerful new states.
And that brings us to this man, Otto von Bismarck, the powerhouse chief minister of Prussia. I mean, look at this cartoon of him literally taming the German parliament. Bismarck was a master of a new, ruthless kind of politics. He famously said that the great questions of the time wouldn't be settled by speeches and debates, but by iron and blood.
And he wasn't kidding. After the liberals failed to unify Germany through talking, Bismarck and Prussia took charge. He then deliberately started and won 3 short, decisive wars. In just 7 years, the Prussian army accomplished what decades of speeches couldn't.
And this is the result. In 1871, they gather in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, of all places, the historic palace of the French kings, to proclaim the new German Empire, with the Prussian king as its new emperor. It was a massive statement. This nation wasn't born from the will of the people, it was forged by the power of the state and its military.
Now, a similar, though maybe a bit messier process was unfolding in Italy. This famous cartoon shows the revolutionary hero Garibaldi helping the king of Sardinia-Piedmont put on a boot shaped like Italy. It's a perfect image because it shows the mix of forces that made Italy. You had the clever politicians like Cavour, and you had the passionate revolutionaries like Garibaldi, all working, sometimes together, sometimes not, to create one nation.
So by the time the 19th century was wrapping up, that utopian dream from the 1848 painting had become a hard political reality. The old patchwork of multinational empires was being replaced by powerful, centralized nation-states like Germany and Italy. The map had changed for good.
But how do you make people feel connected to this new, abstract idea of a nation? Well, artists helped by creating personifications, usually as powerful female figures. This one is Germania, a symbol for the German nation. She's not a real person, obviously, but images like this gave a concrete human face to the idea of a shared German identity, one that stood for strength and liberty.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. The nation-state, this thing that feels so permanent and natural to us today, was once just a radical, revolutionary idea. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, what powerful new ideas are out there right now, quietly reshaping the map of our world today?